Alright guys, it's another day and we are back for some more transfer rumours. Plenty to go through since we last did the video. We've had loads of done deals. Obviously Sheffield United against Hull taking place last night. We've got a bunch more games coming up today in the Championship as well. But if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like. 500 likes would be massively appreciated. Without any further ado though, let's jump into the done deals. We've seen Burnley defender Hannes Delacroix joining Swansea on loan for the remainder of the season. Not played that much football since making the move to Burnley, has missed a lot of action through injury, but we'll be looking to build those minutes back up during the second half of the season while out on loan with Swansea. Fairly versatile, can play either as a centre-half or as a left-back. We've seen Elliot Matazo joining Hull City on a permanent basis from Monaco. Hull have been getting really busy in the transfer market over these last few days, but the 22-year-old Belgian midfielder has joined Hull on a 3.5-year deal. The midfielder only really featured sparingly for Monaco over these last few years, but will now be looking to nail down a consistent spot with Hull. We've also seen Fenerbahce winger Lincoln joining Hull on loan for the remainder of the season. We all know that Hull like to dip into the Turkish market, and they've gone ahead and done that here. We did discuss this one a few videos ago when he was first linked with the club. The Brazilian spent most of last season out on loan in Brazil, so doesn't appear to be part of the long-term plans there at Fenerbahce. And with Lincoln coming in, that has meant the club has been able to let go of Ryan Longman. Interestingly, he's joined Wrexham for an undisclosed fee. Now, a week or so ago, we discussed how Oxford had agreed a deal in principle to take Longman from Hull once they themselves had got a winger in, but Wrexham managed to pip Oxford to his signature, swooping in for him at the last minute. I believe the transfer fee's been reported around about £500,000. He'll no doubt boost Wrexham's promotion hopes in the second half of the season. We also saw Oxford United midfielder Louis Sibley joining Rotherham on loan for the remainder of the season. Sibley, who's only really featured sparingly for Oxford in the first half of the season. He's made 11 Championship appearances, but 10 of those were as a late substitute. And we finally got confirmation on Tom Cannon's move to Sheffield United. It's been in the pipeline for quite some time. He obviously made his debut for the Blades last night against Hull City as well, but in the end Sheffield United did agree a package with Leicester City, the overall deal being worth around about £10 million. He signed on a 4-year contract at Bramall Lane with the option of an extra year as well. The addition of him and Brereton Diaz, I mean, it really has boosted up that Blades forward line, hasn't it? Stoke have finally got their Tom Cannon replacement as Ali Al-Hamadi has signed from Ipswich on loan for the remainder of this season. Now, Stoke have pushed the boat out, it would seem, to get this one over the line. They've paid a substantial loan fee for the Ipswich forward. Obviously, there were a few Championship clubs sniffing around. He's an interesting one, isn't he? Prior to making that move to Ipswich, was really sought after. He was doing really well in League 2 for AFC Wimbledon at the time. Since signing for Ipswich all the way back in the last January transfer window, he's actually only started in one league game for them, with the vast majority of his appearances for Ipswich up until this point coming from the bench. All 11 of his appearances in the Premier League this season have come as a substitute, so looking for a little bit more regular first team action. He'll get that at Stoke. Yeah, I'm interested to see what he's like being back in the Championship, because we only really got to see a brief stint of him last time for Ipswich, didn't we? We've also seen Ryan Giles making his return to Middlesbrough. He signed on loan for the remainder of the season. Interestingly, it doesn't appear as if Borough do have the option to buy though. Now, I'm sure if he does go on to do very well with Middlesbrough in this second half of the season, they'll be looking to negotiate a permanent transfer in the summer, but it feels like quite a big move for Giles, really. The last 2 transfers that he's had haven't gone to plan. The move to Luton didn't work out whatsoever. Hull fans certainly haven't seen the best of him, but thinking back to his days at Middlesbrough previously, it was undoubtedly the best spell of his career. If he can rekindle that sort of form, he could be a brilliant asset for Borough in this second half of the season as they gun for a spot in the playoffs. But definitely someone who maybe has had a bit of a confidence knock recently. He's certainly not looked like himself in a Hull City shirt, I think we could all agree. And another big deal relating to Middlesbrough is Morgan Whittaker. They have gone ahead and signed the Plymouth forward for a base fee of £6 million that could rise to £8 million with add-ons included. So not quite the £10 million package that Plymouth were originally looking for, but it sort of felt like Plymouth have been backed into a corner, especially with Whittaker, how he withdrew from their midweek squad against Burnley. Obviously, him and his agent were pushing for this move. Looking back on that whole situation now, I'd imagine it was probably a case of Whittaker's agent being in his ear around about that game against Burnley and saying, listen, you don't want to you know, jeopardise this move to Borough or anything like that, but it understandably will leave a massive sour taste in the mouths of Plymouth fans right now. He sort of wrecked his legacy by the way he's gone about leaving, hasn't he? During this transfer window, there's been plenty of interest in Whittaker. Burnley have obviously come in with a few bids that have been turned down. In the end, it is Borough who have got this deal over the line. You could argue the real winners of this whole transfer saga, though, is Swansea, because they'll be receiving a hefty bit of change from this one. Swansea did have a sell-on clause inserted into that Whittaker deal, so I believe they're due anywhere from sort of 20 to 25% of this deal. That's the sort of rumour that I've seen floating about. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less than that, but he certainly adds more firepower to that Borough side for this second half of this season. But Plymouth fans in general, what has been your overall reaction to this transfer saga? Because it doesn't feel like Whittaker has come out of it looking great. And after only featuring sparingly in the first half of the season, Middlesbrough have sent Micah Hamilton out on loan to Stockport in League One for the remainder of the season. And I quite like the look of this deal from West Brom. They have signed standard Liège midfielder Isaac Price on a permanent deal. 21-year-old comes over to the Hawthorns for a package believed to be worth in the region of 2.5 million. He's a former academy graduate of Everton and has been a bit of a long-term target for West Brom. They were linked with him back in the summer. A few other Championship clubs, including my team Preston North End, had also been sniffing around, but West Brom have put the money up for him. He's only 21 years old. You'd expect him to develop and get better with age. I think that looks like a pretty tidy bit of business. We've also had some good news for Sheffield Wednesday fans as well, because Shay Charles will be remaining with the club on loan for the remainder of the season. A few weeks ago, we obviously had the confirmation that Southampton had decided to recall the midfielder. And after quite a bit of speculation as to whether he'd be sent out on loan elsewhere in the Championship, there were a few murmurings of Sheffield United being interested at one stage. He will in fact be staying at Sheffield Wednesday. Now, Wednesday have had to do a little bit to go ahead and get him back on loan for the second half of the season. They've reportedly had to pay a 6-figure loan fee, and they'll also be contributing to paying more of his weekly wages than they were originally as well. So a bit more of a financial burden there, but yeah, make no mistake, that's a great bit of business by Wednesday to keep him on loan for the remainder of the season. He'd been one of their best players so far this season, and replacing him at this stage, I think they'd have found quite tough. And before we get into any of the transfer speculation, we've first of all got to speak about some managerial speculation, because we've had all sorts of leaks coming out of Watford recently relating to the future of Tom Cleverley. Now, over these last few days, the rumours have been intensifying that Watford are looking to let go of Cleverley, and even some reports coming out of Spain claiming that they've already found his replacement, that being Juan Jose Rojo Martin, formerly the Villarreal manager. But despite Watford being on a bit of a tough run of form right now, I think it's fair to say the vast majority of that fan base is still very much behind Cleverley. I mean, the position he's got them in the table right now, on the cusp of the top 6, despite the club being in a little bit of a shambles over the summer transfer window, I think is a real testament to Cleverley. I think the whole fan base has really rallied behind that. Now, since all of these rumours have come out, Watford did release a statement on Thursday confirming that Cleverley would still be in charge of Watford for their game this weekend against Coventry, but they'd made no sort of assurances about what's going to happen to him after that match. So still a very strange situation. Watford fans, I'd love to get your take on this one down below. Feel incredibly harsh if they were to dismiss Cleverley at this stage, wouldn't it? But now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some transfer rumours. Sunderland are the latest Championship club to have expressed an interest in Preston North End's Emil Riis. Now, Riis finds himself in an interesting situation right now where he is out of contract with North End at the end of the season, so would be available on a free if North End don't agree a new deal with him. It's a tough one really, because with a player like Emil Riis, you get a lot of pros, you get a lot of cons. Obviously, earlier in the window, Sheffield United were sniffing around. Ultimately, they instead opted to go for Brereton Diaz and Tom Cannon. For a side like Sunderland, Riis would be, like I say, an interesting one. I certainly don't think that he's at the level to be leading the line for an automatic promotion challenger week in, week out, but could someone like Riis give a side like Sunderland something off the bench? Maybe. Especially considering you can definitely get him for a cut price fee right now because of his contract situation. It's why I'd imagine a few Championship clubs will be looking at him towards the end of this window. So far this season, he's got 7 goals and 2 assists. He is quite a streaky player in terms of when he's in form, he can be really good, but when he's out of form, he really doesn't offer you a lot else. But he's 26 years old, and if a side like Sunderland was to come in with a proper bid, I certainly wouldn't begrudge Emil Riis for wanting to make that move, but we'll wait and see if Sunderland do decide to put in a concrete offer for him in these next few days, or whether it's just paper talk right now. Speaking of Sunderland, it feels like every week another one of their players is linked with a move to the Premier League. Now it's Dan Neil, with both Everton and West Ham supposedly interested in the holding midfielder. Now he is under contract with the club until 2026, and understandably Sunderland don't want to lose him at this stage of the transfer window, especially with them in the promotion hunt right now. But if either West Ham or Everton were to come in with a sizable offer, maybe the gears could start turning. Sunderland fans, I want to hear from you in the comments down below. How much would it realistically take for you to be considering cashing in on Dan Neil right now? Cardiff's Ollie Tanner is being eyed up by plenty of Premier League and Championship clubs right now. You've got the likes of Southampton, Leicester, Leeds and Burnley, who are all supposedly interested. Now the good news for Cardiff is that while there does seem to be quite a bit of interest in Tanner right now, he is tied down to a long-term contract with the club. With his current deal valid until 2027, the club certainly aren't in any desperate rush to cash in on him, and if they are to sell him, you'd imagine it would be for quite a sizable fee, especially with a few clubs supposedly interested. I believe he signed his latest contract extension with the club as recently as October as well, so that seemingly seems to be a good bit of business by Cardiff there. Rumour was someone who we spoke about on last time's video, and since that point Sevilla have had a £7 million bid rejected for the Aston Villa youngster. Now the reason this is relevant for Championship clubs is because the likes of Swansea and Derby have both been sniffing around the Aston Villa youngster, looking at signing him on a loan deal. Villa clearly aren't keen on selling him on a permanent basis right now, so a loan move to the Championship could still be sanctioned. Definitely one to watch out for over these next few days. Palmeiras are looking to strengthen their ranks ahead of the Club World Cup, which is coming up later this year, and according to reports in Brazil, they're now eyeing up Sheffield United's Vini Souza. Now, according to that report, Palmeiras would be looking to bring Souza on loan until the summer, as they wouldn't have the finances right now to go in with a permanent move. Now, I mean, in the case of Vini Souza, first half of the season, undoubtedly one of the best midfielders in the Championship. He's been out of action since Boxing Day with an injury. I'm sure Sheffield United fans are desperate to get him back into the team. Listen, it does feel like a bit of a non-story, this, at the moment. Sheffield United, you can't see any reason why they would look to loan him out. Even with the club at the size of Palmeiras supposedly interested and sniffing around right now, if they were to get this deal, you'd imagine they'd have to go in with a permanent offer, and that would have to be pretty substantial as well, given how highly Sheffield United rate him. The future of Grady Diangana is currently up in the air, with his contract at West Brom set to come to an end this summer. Burnley have had a contract proposal turned down by Diangana, and there's also quite a bit of interest from abroad as well, with both Parma and Celta Vigo said to be interested. Now, so far this season, the wingers had a bit of a stop-start campaign, I think it's fair to say. The Championship this season, he's only started in 7 matches. On his day, can be absolutely fantastic, but I think over these last few years he has always blown a little bit hot and cold, really, hasn't he? When he's on it, he can be absolutely fabulous, especially in the Championship, but he's 26 years old now. He'll no doubt be weighing up his options, and I'm very interested to see what happens with Bristol City forward Fally Mayulu this January, because there is a bit of interest from Stoke right now. There was a rumour going around that Stoke had submitted an offer of around about 2.5 million, but I've seen other reports saying that the rumour and the link between Bristol City and Stoke isn't quite that advanced right now. Obviously, Stoke themselves have recently added to their forward line as well, with the introduction of Ali Al-Hamdi coming in on loan from Ipswich for the remainder of the season. Mayulu is a tough one to put your finger on, really, because Bristol City only recently signed him. They brought him in over the summer. He had a decent start to life at Ashton Gate. He scored 2 goals, 2 really good goals actually, early on, but since that point he's just not kicked on. He's only started in 3 Championship matches for Bristol City so far this season. Reminds me a little bit of the Hepe Ockles situation at Preston, where Ockles was our biggest summer signing. He just didn't fit into the way we played whatsoever, and we've ended up sending him out on loan to Aberdeen, so he could end up being a bit of a write-off signing for Bristol City, which would be a shame, but I'm interested to see if that Stoke interest does indeed go anywhere. Sheffield Wednesday are among the clubs considering a move for Nottingham Forest forward Emmanuel Dennis, who seems to be out of the frame there at the City ground. He's not featured for Forest whatsoever this season. Obviously spent the second half of last season out on loan in the Championship with Watford, where I thought he did fairly well. I'd imagine Forest at the very least would be willing to sanction a loan deal. here, and I'd imagine a few Championship clubs would be sniffing around, but Wednesday have been the club name so far, and I think that would be a pretty good deal if they got it over the line. But there you guys have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and get all your thoughts on the recent transfer speculation in the comments down below. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.